Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to Mapping Hour. This is episode number 18. Pretty exciting. Remember that there's a login that is waiting for you if you need one. You do need one to do any of the work that we demonstrate in hours 4 through 20. What did we do last time? Wow, more story maps and projects. And looking at the ArcGIS Online competition for high school and middle school students, it's really very fun to go in and dive into these competition stories that you're seeing and explore what it is that students are able to do. Man, students can do a lot. And so take a look at how they have set up their research projects and their presentations. What have we got today? In this episode, you get two deep dives, one from Charlie and one from Kylie. And the idea here is for you to see what's it like to go into a project and really think about kind of the nuts and bolts of the thinking behind it. Why did some of these decisions get made as they did? What is it like to see the process either deconstructed or somebody working their way through the whole thing from start to finish? Without further ado, I'm going to get started, and I've asked my colleagues to go ahead and jump in and kibitz when necessary. Here's a data collection project that actually you get two data collection projects, two for the price of one here. You get to see a little bit about the past and a little bit about the present. And in order to walk through this, with the arrival of the coronavirus and all of a sudden things started changing for all of us, I said, I want to capture what it's like for some of the teachers so that they can at least record and we can see some of the situations as a historical event. This whole issue of data collection is such a big deal. It's an opportunity for everybody to be documenting current conditions as they're happening. And when looking back, this was the piece that was driving me back in September of 2012. I want to walk you to some thrilling moments of yesteryear. And this begins with a vision that we can crowdsource field work. And so I said, I want to create a document that people can follow. But wait a second, I need to have an experience. I need to have a map for somebody to work with. I'm going to open this up in a new tab. And here in this tab was a map. Let's take a look at this map. Favorite breakfast beverage. I see a bunch of dots on the map. What are these dots on the map? Well, the idea of this was to give people the chance to say, we can create our own data entry process where the users don't even need to have access to full-scale desktop GIS in order to enter data. They can just do this with a web browser. This was mind-boggling back as far back as 2012. This was really exciting to be able to do this. So I've got some instructions here. Click in this browser, click on edit and add your own info about what is your favorite breakfast beverage. Really? Click on the map, click on edit, and add. I'm just going to, for the sake of argument, wow, I could click in the map here and say, woohoo, what's our age? Oh, I'm going to choose 42. There's a nice universal number. Male, female, not designated. I'll choose not designated. What's my favorite breakfast beverage? Water, juice, milk, coffee or coffee-based drink, tea, carbonated soft drink, non-carbonated soft drink, other. I'll go for other. And close. Wow, that was thrilling back in September of 2012. And I walked people through how did I build this with a special document that I've got right here. That was this crowdsource your fieldwork. Well, the notion of being able to do this was so challenging that I wanted people to see it, that I wanted to walk them through. There's a document about table time that is about data, and you may remember this from, let me think, this must have been episode 6 that we walked through this in Mapping Hour. But it was really here working with ArcMap with desktop GIS. Here's the process of creating a new geodatabase and creating a feature class and setting up a point data set and setting the coordinate system and now building the domains for the precisely defined fields. I needed to have 7 fields in here and sets of information. And this is now, this is what it was like back in the bad old days to do what people can do with a web browser right now. You had to have all of these elements pre-constructed about what you're going to do. And then, okay, now we've got a feature class. We need to enable attachments. It was a challenging process to go through and then make sure that there's a relationship between the attachments and, oh, let's go in and test it. See if we can test this. And you had to test it inside of desktop GIS and say, I'm going to go ahead and create a feature and drop a dot. Even this much was kind of thrilling for me to see this can happen. Open the attributes. Here's some cells that need to be filled out. Some fields require data. And now I'm going to stop editing and test it. Looks good. So prepare prepare to document the map. To publish things in the old days was really a challenge. It was many, many steps, which Survey 123 now allows you to do from a browser, and Collector even says you can do this inside of a browser to prepare your data set. That's what, let's see, Kylie and Tom, I think, went through. So all of this publishing process was a much more elaborate system, but it was so new, so powerful, so important for people to do. Oh, this can be shared too. Wow. Make sure that people know why and how to share this stuff. There are many steps that you're going through in order to accomplish it. Finally, now you get to test this at ArcGIS Online. And this was shared with the public, so anybody could get access to it. There it was. And there's my test dot. This was, you can't imagine how exciting this was for me to see the test dot appear on a web browser. No attachments, but hey, we can edit this. Now, the bad news was that anybody could edit anything that anybody had set up in this service. Now, in the way back old days of this, Joseph is actually smiling, looking at the old green app. This is just historic content that you're seeing here. And on the iPhone and the Android phone, they looked different. And so here I'm walking through the process for people who were saying, I want to do some data collection with a smartphone. You can add all of this information. The tools now are so much easier, but the process that I'm walking through right here is a process that has been powerful for a number of years. It's just been a challenging process to accomplish. So what I wanted to do when the coronavirus hit was to give people a sense of a procedure. And I wrote a blog, Fun with GIS 264, that said, back in 2012, I did this thing that was really hard to do, so I documented it carefully. And now you can do this just with browser-based apps and tools on your smartphone. And so this was really, I wanted to put together something that would say ArcGIS Online, Survey 123, Dashboard, and Story Map, bring them all together. I wanted to have somebody be able to understand the power of integrating these tools. And you can do this now on a tablet or even a smartphone with the tools that exist. So I created in a new story map the experience for somebody to document, some teacher to document their conditions under the coronavirus hitting our society. And here's the story map. So let me just open that up in a separate tab here. So here's education and coronavirus, a look at what's happening with schools. It's creating havoc with schools. What's happening for you? The survey below is interactive. You can click into it and respond, or you can respond on your own device. And I'm going to stop right here and say, this was what was in my mind of what I wanted people to do. Where am I going to go with this? How do I get there? How do I think about this? So I want to take you, let me biggerize this just a little bit. I want to take you into what was in my mind as I was thinking about this situation that we're in and how do we get there. So I wanted to construct this, and it was a process of conceive, sketch, and I really mean sketch, build, test, tweak, repeat, and then share it with the world. So what's the workflow? We talked before about a workflow, the process that I went through in this project. Conceive the end product. Okay, the story map is going to be the container. Somebody's going to be able to look at this and work their way through the story map. So there's going to be a survey that people will go through. Well, I'm going to need to have an introduction above the survey. Can't just have a survey out of nowhere. There's got to be a reason for it. A survey that ends up feeding a map. Now, if I'm doing this inside of a story map, I don't want to embed sort of the map from Survey 123. I'm going to need a regular map because I want then that map to feed a dashboard. And I can't do that easily right out of Survey 123. I need that map. What end product should users be able to explore? I want them to explore a dashboard. How will they explore it? There's gonna have to be some data there. Okay, what do I want them to explore? It's inside the dashboard. I want the map and the charts to be interactive. Okay, so what's going to be the data that I need to make sure goes into the survey so that they can explore it in the dashboard? So they all have to work together. So I need to figure out what it's going to look like. So the process then working with these tools was to go ahead and build these things, design the survey questions and choices, optimizing for valuable data in a format that the dashboard could make dance, and design it so that it's easy for the survey taker. And you'll see something a little bit later that I ended up making a mistake here because I didn't think about carefully enough about the experience for the dashboard. And I'll walk you back through that one. Submit enough test data so that each possible choice is engaged at least once. Then set the permissions, generate a map out of the test data. Symbolize the data that's on the map, set the pop-ups, set the bookmarks, save the map, share the map into a dashboard. Now, I'm getting to where sort of the rubber meets the road. Build the dashboard, configure these elements, make sure that I'm optimizing for the power and interest of the user that way, and make them be interactive. Build the story map that holds all these things, and then share it with people enough so that there is a little bit of data that is in there and people can participate as anonymous users. Okay, once I've done that, now I got to go back and delete all of the test data that I included in there. All right, so let's take a look at this. Education and coronavirus. And in the background, I see this red thing that looks vaguely like a world map and some charts. This is the dashboard that is the Johns Hopkins University dashboard about the coronavirus. I just wanted it to be a sort of a vague concept to make the viewer come in and see and be thinking about that. And this bright red on this deep jet black background, you've seen that enough. So that will do that in your mind. Okay, I was thinking that some people might be in a situation where they would be looking at this and saying, "Oh, can I actually do this with my phone?" And they could hold up their phone and look at it and take the picture and take the survey. But I included the survey anyway. So interacting with it, here's today's date, your identifier, first name, nickname, initials, pet name, avatar, whatever you want. Required date, required identifier. Why? Because I want them to be able to see their data. Your grade band that you work with. Now I began with the number 1 because 1, 2, 3, 4, I use these numbers in here because if you think back to what Kylie was doing when she was setting up a dashboard, I was not as clever as Kylie when I first set this up. And so I set it up as just elementary, middle, high school, and high school. Okay, so how does that alphabetize? Elementary, high school, middle school. That's not what I wanted to have in my charts. I wanted to have it be, a nice, neat chronological progression. So I ended up, after I set it all up, I went through and I discovered that the dashboard wasn't working quite right. And I said, you know what? I screwed up. I have to do this again. So I reset. I did a save as on my survey 1, 2, 3, and had to go back and change and make survey number 2. So I've got a question about grade band, a question about content focus, and here again, I wanted to be able to maintain this order and not have the dashboard put it into a different sequence than I wanted. So I said, your title is going to be 3 social studies and 4 sciences, so that these numbers would show up. Kylie had a better way to do that. Your instructional situation today. School is underway, on-site, unchanged. School is underway online. School is underway, but minimal attendance. School is off. We'll start up online within 2 weeks or more than 2 weeks. For the rest of the year, no clarity. Now, rate your students' access to learning resources. I've got 4 questions and I want 4 categories here. And you can do this in Survey 123 to make a grid. I want 4 questions, all that you're thinking about in several different ways. Now, I like even numbers of classes in here. If you give somebody 3 choices, most people are going to pick the middle. If you give somebody 5 choices, most people are going to pick the middle. If you get 4 choices, I have to be some direction from the middle. And I wanted people to have to identify their school-issued tablet or laptop access, their personal home tablet laptop access, access to good nearby broadband internet, and teachers skilled in teaching online. Low, medium, high, or high for all of them. And now here's a map based on the data of the people who responded to it. Cool, here's my map. So I've got some responses, but it's just the map. So anybody who submitted a request, submitted a data point, their dot will show up here because the map is being refreshed every 15 seconds or so. And here's a dashboard based on that data. Now we're looking at the dashboard. Oh, click in here to interact with it. And yes, I can launch it out into its own new tab if desired. But I'm just going to leave it inside the browser so that you can see. What have I got here? I've got 37, 34. So this is interactive, so that when the map moves, all of the different charts move and the total moves. So that if I go back to my default map extent, which just barely gets that dot in Alaska, but I'm not seeing Hawaii. Oh, I don't have any from Hawaii. Oh, there we go. I've lost a couple from Alaska. So you've got to be conscious about this. Now, what am I seeing here? School is underway online. Oh, look at that. When I click here, the map responds and only shows those, and each of the charts, the ones that are underway online, you can see the characteristics about them. And if I click it again, it unselects. Well, does it work over here? I click on the student access to school-issued tablet or laptop, low. I can see the 17 that were low in low access to school-issued tablet or laptop. Maybe I can try this with the grade band taught. Is there a difference between high school? Ooh, now we might start finding something. Or higher ed. The only one that I'm seeing in higher ed is that it's low. Higher ed says low here. Student access to personal, okay, I can see medium low, medium high, and high. What about elementary school? So I'm going to unclick that and then click on elementary. Okay, part of the magic about this was the interaction that I was looking for. I needed to make sure that I could classify these guys in the right way. And so it's this vision of my end product that was driving what I needed to do in the survey. And you can see that. Let's go back here to the Education Resources org, where I'm logged in. This is where the content was stored for my map, for my survey, for the map, for the dashboard. And so here you are, survey, education, and coronavirus 2. Because I did it the first time and it wasn't working in the dashboard. My classes over on the right-hand side were jumbled. They were alphabetically organized. Kylie had a smart way to figure out how to do that just with numbers when she was setting it up. So here I just did a save as in survey 123 and tweaked how I had set everything up. And then came in, I've got my map, I've got my feature layer hosted. That's the core one. This is the one that shows up, is actually being used by the survey data. Here's the map. Here's the dashboard made according to the map. And here's the story map that integrates them all. So that, let's go back to the story map and let's undo elementary. So what I was trying to do in here was to give people the opportunity to enter and catalog some of their data. And some people submitted, a little bit of information, but when given the choice of additional information, they didn't submit much. Some people came in and they said, yep, I'm going to submit information about our situation, and the additional information is a wonderful document about, wow, look at what is happening, what is going on here in his school. There's this nice document that anybody could come in and take a look at and really learn about, and he ends up with what an adventure. For this is probably more variety than most teachers are interested in. But I wanted to make sure that this would people know how to, would people know to click on a chart or a pie slice? And so I ended up putting some text in here right near this so that as people are looking to see what the chart is, they might see, oh, I should click on these things and say, where are the science people? Ah, cool. How about the social studies people? Okay, not as many of them. They're more science people. They're more interested, more interesting, maybe. And then, oh, hint, I did it up here at the top as well. Hint, in the map, try pan and zoom and bookmarks. In any chart, try clicking and unclicking. So I've tried to reference each of the different parts from each of the different parts. And the end result was this dashboard. And then finally, hey, every school can have access to these tools for instructional use. And here's where you can find some links. Stay safe, people. So that's the quick look at this project, what gave birth to it, that experience from back in 2012 and this crazy pandemic. I think Joseph has a...
Mr. Fitzpatrick, I have a question. You've got a lot of great resources on GeoNet and elsewhere. I'm wondering, what would be the phrase that I would look for if I wanted to find your blog hooked to the survey?
So esriurl.com/funwithgis. And so here you can see the old time and the new time. So 264 is the new blog that links directly to the survey.
Thanks. And are you still interested in having people fill that out?
Sure, you bet.
Okay.
Go ahead and fill it out. All right.
I have a question for you. So was there a geographic pattern in the breakfast beverage consumption?
Breakfast beverage. Yes, most people were on land.
That's it, huh? Okay.
That's it. And that's really it. And was this us? 14 not designated. Okay, I'm going to have to go back and delete that. Oh, look at this. I can delete it. Bing, our dot is gone. So the data here in this one, it's unsafe. You can't believe it. And so that's why I left it just as a single color. I recognize that nobody's going to believe any of this data as realistic. So that's my story. I'm going to stop sharing now and turn it over to Kylie.
Thanks, Charlie. So it was really interesting hearing about that, and especially like the workflow you did, because as I was listening, I was like, oh, he keeps saying breakfast beverage, but I think he's talking about my project, right? Like there are just so many similar patterns that I followed. And like you said to us when you started, if any of you guys have questions or comments as I'm talking, please interrupt me. I'm sure there are going to be things that people want to know more about that I don't give quite enough info. So I'm going to start off and share my screen. My project is a little bit different than Charlie's in a couple ways, because all projects are different, right? My project is actually one that's still in progress. So this is one that I'm actively working on, and it came about just because of something I was interested in. And so to me, it's just interesting to think about things that we're passionate about and how we can use GIS to learn more about them or do something different with our other passions. And this actually came about because I love to go running. And I have a number of running buddies. You see a couple of them here on the screen. And as you can see, the one pointing there, that's Bjorn. He and I run quite a lot. He's another Esri employee. He's pointing at something because Bjorn always has an idea of where we should run. If you were to map the places in his head that he'd like to go run, you'd probably just cover the earth. But in this time, we're all kind of staying a little bit separate. And there's a common running challenge of running every street in your city. So a couple of us started playing with that. Could we do this? Well, what if we look at the runs of, there's 4 of us interested right now. What if we look at the runs all 4 of us are doing? How much of the city do we cover? And let's just look at this year. What about as an individual? How much are we covering then? Well, we have this bucket of data, and I'll show you what that is in just a minute, and we decided to play with it. Not all of us are GIS people. 3 of the 4 doing this project actually are Esri employees, but 1 isn't. And we got inspired by this one map that we all saw on a website we all use when tracking our running activities. And I'll show that in just a minute. I just want to show one more slide before I really jump in. And that's a little bit about our challenges. All right, so what streets count if we're going to say we're going to run every street in Redlands? So Redlands is a fairly old town. We have a number of alleyways. We have some private communities. What are we going to consider being done, right? What's that finish line? Well, what counts as running a street? If I go through the intersection, is that good enough? Well, some of the Redlands streets, there are chunks of them that don't connect, right? One street with one name, and it has like pieces throughout the city, and you can't just run down it. Well, if I've ran one of those, does it count as running all of them? Are we counting by name? Right? Where have we run? Like I said, we have a bucket of data, and we'll look at that in a minute. But also, how can we see what's left? So there's all this information, and it's on a map, but we want to make it a bit more meaningful. And we want to accomplish this goal, right? And I think that's really important in this project, was accepting that it was okay not to know exactly what to do. Because I tend to be a bit of a perfectionist. I want to know what X, Y, and Z boxes I have to check to be done. I want to know, understand the steps between them. I want that written down. I want to know our processes. But that doesn't always work. You have to be ready to let go of some of that, to get a little bit dirty with this data, right? Get up to your elbows and just dig around, see what you can do. And the other one is, we didn't have to be exact. The answer that we come to about what counts as running a street might be different than another group would come to. This is our project. It was what it meant to us. And that comes into play in the data a little bit, and I'll talk about that in a minute. All right, so let's jump in. So I mentioned there's a website that a lot of us use to track our runs. And one of the features on that website is they have heat maps. So you can come in and you can build heat maps based on your own activities. You can see here, this is my running heat map. So it only looks at running. You could put cycling and walking and hiking and all kinds of activities that you've done and tracked with a GPS into this website. And this is all of 2020. So you could set a time frame for your heat map. This is kind of what started our discussions as we were running one day. We said, well, we can tell what's darker red, we run more often. There's a great trail right here. Yep, I definitely run on that. I know I've covered that this year. I know I've covered that this week. But what about some of these other areas? Why do I not run them? Well, a lot of the time it's just habit. It's not like there's no reason to run there. And now that we're home and we have some time to play with things, let's make some maps that we want to go run. So this was kind of our inspiration. And we also kind of had an idea what we wanted. In running, you've all heard of running races, right? And in a running race, there's a leaderboard. There's first, second, third, fourth place, and often that's based on time. Well, in this case, we want to have a leaderboard and a team stat based on who's covered the most streets. Where are we at? Where's this progress? And so what I'm going to show you next, I'm actually going to jump to the end. So where we were going, and it is a dashboard, like Charlie talked about. And you can see some of the data we ended up with, some colorization. I'm going to talk through all of this. So this is just kind of a sneak peek. And here we have our leaderboard, our mileage, and who's running it. All right, we have some gauges showing both our individual contributions here, as well as our team one. We have our definition of what counts as running something. You can see in the legend. I care about what I've done. So I've ran it. No one has ran it. Someone's ran it, right? Which means it wasn't me, but the team's covered it. So right now, I mentioned this is a work in progress. This dashboard looks pretty real, right? And it is. It's an ArcGIS Online dashboard. I can pan the map. If another run got added, you would see these numbers update, right? But there's a little bit fake to it, which is that I did take a snapshot of that data. The process of how we're adding runs all the time is not automated yet. And in fact, in this dashboard, we don't quite have our data structure nailed down completely yet. We're still iterating on that. We're still working on getting it to be able to generate this dashboard. So right now, for example, I cheated and I have a table that just has our names and our mileage, and that's how I'm creating the leaderboard. It's not based off the same data set you're seeing on the map, because right now our data set doesn't get there. Okay, so that's part of this project. And we have 3 people with a lot of years of GIS experience, and the other person who's contributing some wonderful ideas coming from his point of view. And still, it's just going to take time to get exactly what we want. All right, so now we've looked a little bit at what I'm trying to do. And I'm going to go ahead and jump in and show some of this data that we had access to, because there were 2 really important things for this project. One, running, right? We need to know where we've ran. And like I said, we all run with GPS devices. Every run I've done for years is all on a website. I can see that data. I can download that data. I can get GPX files of it. And we saw in episode 6, I can take those and drag and drop them onto the map. I'm not worried about that part. I know we have data about where we've ran. All right, what about streets? And what counts as a street? So that was one that was, to me, a little bit bigger of a question, but not to Bjorn. He knew a great source we could use. And so what we ended up using for that is called OpenStreetMap. Now, these are base maps you can use in Esri, but one of the really cool things with OpenStreetMap, you can see I'm actually signed in to the OpenStreetMap, and I can edit this data. Now, this is both good and bad, right? Because when you have an account, you're saying, I know some things about this data. I have value to add. And you can see all these road segments, and you can click on them, and you can actually edit this. And just like Charlie was talking about in his project, that's good and bad, because there is tracking in this of who edits what, but someone who wants to be malicious could be. Now, the reason we chose it was because it has attributes on these roads that give you information about who can go there. So I'm going to select one, not so I'm going to edit it right now, but so that we can see some of the information that's available. And it's actually done through some tagging, which we've talked about before. So this data heavily on tags. It basically generates all of the information based on tags that it uses as attributes. And you can see here what kind of access is allowed. Well, if I'm trying to generate all of the roads that I can run on, it needs foot access. So this data set has that information. Now, it's not perfect. One of the things we found, in particular, this area I'm in right now, right in here is a community of some older folks, and it's a private community. And right now, they actually are experiencing an outbreak of the coronavirus. Now, on the best of days, they don't mind if we run through their community. It's a private community, but they're open to people walking through and passing by. It's not gated. However, right now, they have signs at every entrance saying, please don't come in right now. We'd like our space. And we want to respect that as we're doing this project. So we were actually able to get those roads marked in such a way that when we got our data set, it's not included. So we're not going to be penalized for not running there, because right now, if you look at these roads, it says access is private. So what we did is we made sure we had data we liked, and definitely an iterative process here, let me tell you. There's another website that works with the other one where we could specify the data we wanted. Now, this is a little bit of a techie structure. It takes a little bit of time of reading, but basically what we've said is things like the types of roads we want it's called highway, it just means street. We want things where the foot access that we were just kind of looking at doesn't say no, it doesn't say private. We want to be able to go there. We want to know that access in general is allowed. And we want sort of the Redlands, Loma Linda, and Hulda Crooks, which we've seen in earlier episodes, roads and trails, because that's the area we're interested in. And with this, we could actually export that data, and we were then able to use it into a map. So here's what we got. I'm going to go ahead, and right now, just look at the purple lines. So those are our roads. These brown lines you can see as well are GPX files I dragged and dropped right on top. We'll talk about them in a minute. But you can see this data we got. And you can zoom in, and you can see it's pretty complete. And in fact, when we're looking at that community I was just talking about with the private roads, you can see it's not included. So when we were making this, we tweaked attributes. We made sure that the data was updated, not in ways that other people wouldn't also be able to use, because we had to keep in mind other people are using this data too, but in ways that improves the quality of that data. That is a private road. And especially right now, they don't want anyone accessing it. And then we would download that data and put it in a map and use our knowledge of the city to say, wait a minute, why was this area excluded? Oh, okay, that's a shopping area. We know we don't want it. Or over here is a gated community, right? So we had to take a process of playing with the data, looking at the data we got from playing. Let's play with a little more. Let's look at it again. And in fact, the first time I excluded these roads, I missed one. There was a road right here that said we still had to run it. So I had to go back in, fix that section, and look at it again. All right, now let's look at our GPS data here. All right, so you can see this was actually a day I knew we were trying to run every road. So you can see I made sure I was getting all the cul-de-sacs, getting all these details that were going to help us through this project. But one of the things to look at, I'm going to jump over here, because here's the road I was running, Cypress Avenue. And this is my town. I know I ran on it. But here's my GPX line. So let's think about some reasons for that. One reason could be I didn't have great signal, right? GPS, we've talked about this before, and I think that was also episode 6, right, when we were looking at this. It's not exact. It's not to the centimeter. Well, not with the device I was using, right? And so when I look at this, does this count as running this road? Well, for our project, we decided it does. And actually, I'm going to zoom in a little more and show you part of how we figured it out. We did some measuring in the map. We said, okay, if we're here and this is where we're trying to cover, okay, that was almost 20 meters apart. Now, in this case, I was on the sidewalk. This is a wide road with a sidewalk a little bit set back from the road. What we ended up doing is saying, you know, it seems like, and again, iterative process, this may not be our final number, but is the number we're using now. It seems like as long as I was within 25 meters of that road, I was probably running on it. So we ended up looking at this data, and we could actually see the dots of where we ran. This is where the GPS recorded us, and the brown line is the line it created based on it. And so we were able to use this intersection. We never actually crossed through it, right? Our dots are over here. Well, did I run there, right? So we had to look at this data and kind of understand it. And because we created it by running, we know it pretty well. And we were able to say, okay, 25 meters counts. That is what I'm going to say. If I'm within 25 meters of this road, I've ran that road. And what we ended up doing is taking this road data that we clipped, this big area with all of the purple lines, and we actually added our own attributes into that data after we'd exported it from the other system. So now we've personalized this data. We added some fields to say, have we ran here? Now, another thing we had to think about, what about right here? I crossed this road. Did I run on Sherwood Street? Well, no, I ran through an intersection, but that doesn't mean I ran on it. And yes, I was within 25 meters. So what we ended up having to do is look at these actual purple dots and look at how many of them were close enough. And we ended up doing things like breaking our entire road network into 25-meter sections, so we could just look at, did I run that 25 meters? Did I run that 25 meters? Now, it's going to give you some weird artifacts by doing it that way. Sometimes in our data at an intersection, it looks like we ran 25 meters up the road or 10 meters up the road and came back. Well, we didn't, and we know that, and we're refining this, right? Again, that iterative process. All right. So one of the things in Charlie's project was it was data collection. And so one of his concerns was what data other people are putting in and doesn't meet his requirements. Is it good? Is it accurate? One of the nice things in our project is we're controlling all of the data brought in, right? We don't have to rely on other people to do it well, but we do have to rely on us making the right decisions, right? So our data quality is driven a little bit more by us and in our control, but we still have some of those same challenges with it. All right, so to get to this dashboard again, we still aren't quite there, but we're over time adding attributes. In fact, some of these attributes we're adding in order to make dashboard happy, just like Charlie did, right, with adding those numbers in the list. So we have attributes on the road that make it easier for us to process the data in the dashboard. We started out with one field listing the name of every runner who'd ran that section. And then in dashboard, we couldn't quite use it. Now I'm going to go ahead and jump to the map first to show something that is interesting with that. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this in a couple episodes. But one thing we were able to do was if we go ahead and we look, not that table, that's just our boundary. Let's go ahead and look at our attribute table. So you can see we started with this column of runners. And I ended up adding some Boolean columns or true false kind of columns to know, okay, Alan, Irwin, and Kylie ran it, but I need to be able to use this data in a dashboard, so I want separate numbers. Now, what's really interesting to me, and the reason I mention this is I'm going to come back to it in a few episodes, I didn't need to do that to get the map to look like this. Because in the map, I have a tool that could take this column of runner data and process it for me in the map. And I was able to actually do my symbology based on processing the data in this column, which is something I'm going to play with later. It's called Arcade. It's just a really cool, powerful tool we can use to bring a little bit of programming in to get some neat tweaking to our maps. That's what I did here. But in Dashboard, I couldn't use that same tool of Arcade in certain ones of their elements. So that's why I ended up adding columns, because in my final tool, my final presentation here, even though it shows the colors of the maps I wanted, it could not create this chart because I couldn't process that column correctly. I needed to have those raw numbers, and these as well. Knowing who ran what as a single value became really important. All right, so we're still tweaking our data structure, and we're really focused on the data structure that's going to enable the tool and the display and that final thing that we want. And one of the things that's interesting to us is as we're doing this, we have two different goals here in some sense, right? We have one big project. We want to run all the roads in 2020 that's in whatever area we define. But there are two aspects to that. One is, how much have I covered? Where have I ran? And that's what we're looking at here. Allen's ran 100 miles of this section. But another aspect of that is Allen's out running right now. Which street should he pick? Where hasn't he run? So there's kind of two things important to us. And in this dashboard, it's mostly about where have we ran. So you'll see things like the color choices I made in the map. Green means I've ran there. It's a little bit quieter of a color on this map. The orange means someone on our team has ran there. A little bit louder because I care a little bit more. And then these dark ones, those are where I haven't ran yet. I need to make sure I cover those areas if I want to stay on top of this leaderboard, because otherwise one of these other guys will. I know it. All right. And so that's one of the problems, right? Is getting the colors to help me answer the question. And again, it came down to playing with it, right? Play with the data, see what works right. This map might look different for the dashboard and the mobile app I'm going to use on my phone. And yes, one of the Esri employees did make a mobile app for us that we can have on our phones to look at this map when we're running, see the areas we haven't ran, and make the right decisions at intersections, right? We're a little bit of map geeks like that, but it's all fun. All right, so I am going to jump back to my slides now because I want to talk a little bit about what Tom was talking about yesterday, that iterative process, that project design cycle, right? And if you remember, you end up back in that ask phase again, right? We're going full circle. As we're doing this, we're not even done yet. We already have new asks, right? New questions. How can we best see in the field what we need to run? That's that app that Erwin's making because, again, take some people with a passion for something, an interest in it, some problems to solve, and a little bit of free time, and you're going to end up with some interesting projects. All right, how can we make it easier to add future runs? We're already trying to figure out how to automate more of this. We're already talking about what if someone else wants to join us? What if someone else doesn't want to join us but wants to do this on their own with their group of friends? Can we share this with people, right? What if I wanted to know what days did I run that road section? We have, as I said, all of this information for every single run. I know every time I've ran that segment. How do we link it all together? What kind of displays can create about that? What interactive experiences? So again, because we had an interest in this question, we're not finding it hard to come up with new projects to do, new lines of inquiry. We're finding it harder, honestly, to stay focused enough to finish one at a time, right? And one of the things that this reminded me of is when I was in my daughter's second grade class once, and I was doing survey 1, 2, 3 with the kids. And I said, okay, we're going to interview each other in our class. You can talk about anything you want. Come up with a question. And the only rule is your question has to have something to do with location. Okay, well, I've never been a teacher, so I'm learning a bit on my feet too about how the students might process that, how they'll use it. And of course, a number of them said, I don't have any questions I want to ask. I'm not interested in anything that's going to be a good interview. I don't have any location questions. And so I had to back up a little and say, well, what do you like? Right? And if you just start thinking about what do you like, you're going to find that location matters. And that's the case of this. We just happen to be talking about running. Obviously there's a location component, and with all of us having GPS watches on our wrists, we knew we were interested. But in the second grade classroom, when I said, what do you like? Well, I like sports. Okay. Well, do you have a favorite team? Oh, yeah, I like the Dodgers. Okay, where are they from? Oh, hey, there's a location question. So if you just start talking to people about what they like and think about different aspects of that interest or passion, it can kind of help you define and find these really interesting projects. And so that to me is really key here. Just the idea that we gave ourselves the freedom to play, to explore, to try new things, to not worry about being wrong, and that we were interested. All right, I'm going to go ahead now. Anyone want to interrupt? Questions?
I have a quick question for you.
All right.
So if a family at home wanted to do something like this, I mean, not obviously to this extent, maybe at least to start with, maybe they're taking regular walks or bicycle trips around the neighborhood. Is there a good way for them to do something like this with maybe some of our field apps?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So, and interestingly, it came up on a call that Erwin and Bjorn and I were having yesterday, where Erwin said, I'm tired of waiting for Bjorn to add my latest runs in. You can see he's at the bottom of the leaderboard. And it's not necessarily because he hasn't covered as many sections, but maybe his haven't been added to our data set yet, right? And so he actually works on the App Studio team, which is the product that Esri uses to make Quick Capture, to make Survey 123, right? And so he said, hey, I want access to your data set. I'm just going to use Quick Capture while I'm out in the field, and I'm going to get a good enough answer. And we said, great, you can do that, and you can use it visually. That's a perfect entry point, right? Mm-hmm. Take Quick Capture out in the field. It can collect your lines and actually follow you as you're walking, and then you'll see them on a map when you get home. And you can take all of those different times that you walk and layer them onto one map, right? We've all taken layers now through the mapping hour and put it into one map. So it's a great way to kind of do this visually. Now, we took it a little bit geekier and told Erwin, sorry, that doesn't count because you're going to be doing things that aren't official roads. And for our percentages to be real, this has to be on road data. Now, that's just us. Again, our project definition, right? But definitely take out Quick Capture at home, go walk some areas, track where you've been, and then look, where in your city do you tend to go right now?
Thanks.
Hey, Kylie, I love this. Knowing how hilly Redlands is, could I do something similar to what you've done here and then bring it into what we had in a couple of mapping hour episodes, bring it into a 3D scene, visualize it that way?
Yeah, it's interesting. That's also one of the things on my to-do list. I really want to play with some of these GPX files on scenes and look at this data. So yeah, where there's interest and passion, you can find unending number of projects to explore.
So I could just drop those GPX files onto a 3D scene and tilt it and see, wow, look at this big hill that I just ran. Okay,
yeah, all different
cool.
visualizations. All right, well, thanks. I hope you kind of enjoyed seeing this. I would say 3 of my main passions are running, education, and GIS, so it's really fun to let all of them meet in this.
That's cool, Kylie. I'm so much more boring than you. I walk the same route every day. And back in my running days, I would run the same route every day and be perfectly happy with it.
I think we did a lot more of that before we all had GPS devices on our wrists, because there's something about knowing the distance and where you've been that now we can get on our wrist.
Yep. All right. What's to review? Project by Charlie, project by Kylie. Well, mine was about choreographing an experience and working through these different elements. And Kylie had the same elements in hers. She had a really much more elaborate data exploration. All of these skills come together. This is exactly what GIS people do in their jobs, and why this is so valuable for people to create these projects about something that you're really interested in and explore. And the elements from episode 17, where you're working on story maps, are listed here again, because these are going to be the same things if you're thinking about putting together that final end product. Each of the pieces that we've gone through in the earlier episodes are going to be valuable. So go back and visit those if you're thinking about maps, about Survey 123, about dashboards. And what have we got in next episode? Why, it's Joseph and Tom. And we'll see you there. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.